I want to make some comments about Western Sydney, the vaccine rollout, and obviously Western New South Wales. We know that there are 50,000 people at least in Western Sydney. There are something like 56,000 Aboriginal people in the Western Division of New South Wales. On the north coast of New South Wales, there are 87,000. And in the Murray-Darling Basin, there is something like 57,000 people, which is the same number as the Northern Territory. My question is, how on earth could the government have got it so wrong to forget or not consider that there are these numbers of vulnerable communities right here in the state of New South Wales, right across the country, but I'm talking about New South Wales today. Anthony Albanese made the suggestion that the ADF be involved, particularly in Western Sydney, where, as I said, there are 50,000 Aboriginal people, to be more involved in vaccine distribution. People are doing their best, but they just cannot do it to scale to reach the number of people that need to be reached. In Western Division in New South Wales, that's from Dubbo right out through Bourke, Walgett, Brewarrina, Dubbo, Nyngan, that part of the world, right down to Denton, all along the river system. There are so many people living that are vulnerable. And finally, we know that all of the new cases in Bourke yesterday, I haven't received the numbers today, but all of the new cases in Bourke yesterday were Aboriginal people, young Aboriginal people. This is a rolling, unmitigated disaster. Scott Morrison made much to do today about getting 1 million vaccines. It is catch up and plugging holes, nothing more. And I'll leave it at that. Jade.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about that announcement today about 1 million extra doses. 530,000 of those will go to the 12 Sydney local government areas, mostly in southwest Sydney. Do you welcome that, and should it be going to people in that younger age group, as the Prime Minister says?
I'm standing in the seat of Barton. I'm standing in the last corner of the seat of Barton, the seat that I represent, that is not part of those 12 LGAs. The rest of the electorate is. And right through, we go through Watson, through Green, through the Greenacre area, down right through Michelle Rowland's area, right out to Chifley. There are people where the situation is getting worse. We know this outbreak started in Bondi, but the people of the western and southwestern parts of Sydney are the people that are suffering. Vaccinations are the answer, but it is not to scale, and there has to be concentration of vaccines in that part of Sydney. So the fact that Scott Morrison has made the announcement that half of the vaccines that he's talking about today will go out to that area is important. But that is small comfort to people like Khalil Ibrahim, who buried both of his parents a week ago.
Do you think that the government should have allocated Pfizer or targeted Pfizer doses in southwest Sydney earlier than it has?
Well, there is clearly a massive and growing problem in southwest Sydney. There needs to be a huge effort, including the use of the ADF, in distributing and injecting vaccines in southwestern and western Sydney. I looked at the statistics in Chifley today. It is just growing and growing and growing, the number of infections. I just hope it's not too late.
And sorry, just one more from me. Do you think that when it comes to the other states' share of this extra 1 million doses, doses, should they have to give those doses to people in that younger age group, or should other states be free to allocate those Pfizer doses as they see fit?
The responsibility for vaccine and vaccine rollout is the federal government. It shouldn't be up to states and territories who need their vaccines for their own populations to fill the gap. This is the responsibility, fair and square, of the federal government, and that's where the vaccines should be coming from. Jay. Jay?
Danielle.
Danielle.
Hello, hi. Just shifting from vaccines a little bit, can you give us a little bit of an idea of what the challenges are for communities that now have COVID in remote and rural areas, particularly with resources, hospital-wise, or being able to contain it?
There are enormous challenges in the western part of New South Wales, right through the Murray-Darling, right along the Darling River, down into the Denton area. It is enormous because these places are small. Many of them are almost totally Aboriginal. There are not pharmacies. There are not places that we have in the city where distribution can take place. There is vaccine hesitancy. That is true, which is why the government needs to understand that they have to have a particular communication strategy. There needs to be more support given to the Aboriginal health services out there, and there needs to be the availability of vaccines. The vaccine rate in these parts of New South Wales is so low compared to the national average. It's fine to talk about figures that are high level and the averages across Australia, across states, but in some of those communities the vaccine rate is as low as 2%. There has to be a focus, an understanding of those communities, an understanding of what those challenges are, and working with those communities which they want to do to make sure that they are protected. The vulnerabilities in those communities are huge because of the health challenges, because there are large families, multi-generational people living in homes, and because people haven't been exposed to the virus. This is a new challenge for a very stoic people.
And I guess moving forward, the Prime Minister has said that vaccinating Indigenous population was sort of a priority previously. Does it seem like that hasn't actually come to fruition, and it's only coming to fruition now that there's cases in those communities, and is it too late?
Look, that is the question, the $24,000 question. The Prime Minister and the federal government have made much to do about the protection of Aboriginal communities. They were worried from the beginning about the vulnerability. Well, here we are. The vulnerability is on full display. So I don't want to hear the rhetoric anymore. I want to see things done, and I want those communities protected. I hope that the genie is not out of the bottle.
And in terms of the data, do you think that there should be sort of a published daily data on the immunisation rates of Indigenous communities? Would that be something?
Labor is calling, and everyone that I've spoken to thinks it's a very sensible idea that the government actually reports A, on the rate of vaccination in Indigenous communities, and B, on the availability of vaccines. At the very least, that is a reasonable ask given the situation that's unfolding in Western New South Wales.
Sorry, just lastly, obviously we've been in this pandemic for a while now. All of New South Wales is locked down and they're trying to ramp up vaccination rates. Is this going to help the Indigenous communities, or is it sort of too late now?
Well, I am very pleased to see that vaccination rates are being ramped up. But this pandemic has been with us for 18 months. I am astounded at the lack of preparedness of the government. We have seen yesterday alone in Dubbo, every new case was a young Aboriginal person. Every single new case. And I suspect today is not much different. There has to be massive effort and honesty and accountability from the federal government about the rates of vaccinations for First Nations people and the availability of vaccinations out in those communities.
I think that was all my questions. Was there anything else that you
No,
wanted
I think that covers everything. Thank you both.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye. Bye.